Shalom and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we're going to do something a little different. Today I'm guiding the Israel with Aline caravan here in Jerusalem. And I want to take you with me firsthand so you can see what it's really like to be a pilgrim in the Holy Land. So if you're ready, let's get started. Shalom. We're here with the Israel caravan and Aline. We're ready to go up to the Temple Mount now, and we're going to take you along so you can get to know a little more. So if you're ready,
let's get started.
Let's go. We are now on the Temple Mount, and we are going to understand a bit about the history of this place, which is a history of around 3,800 years. Let's try to cover 3,800 years in a few minutes. If we arrived here during the Middle Bronze Age, 3,800 years ago, none of these buildings we see around us would exist. This was an open area, a mound, a hill outside the city of Jerusalem, or as it was also called at that time, Salem. So here there was this open hill. And why does it become important? Because Abraham takes his beloved son Isaac and brings him to Mount Moriah. And when he was ready to sacrifice his son as God had commanded, what happens? God sends an angel who stops this sacrifice, and instead God also sends a lamb, sends an animal to be sacrificed in that place. So here on Mount Moriah, it's the place of God's covenant with Abraham, the covenant of monotheism, which we follow to this day. It was sealed here on Mount Moriah with this great test. So this place becomes biblically important, but then it remains open and barren for a long time, for many, many centuries, until King David arrives here. King David then conquers the city of Jerusalem, which at that time was a city of the Jebusites. He conquers the city, buys the land that was called the threshing floor of Araunah, which is the area of Mount Moriah. He is ready to build the temple, and God says, "No, you have blood on your hands. You will not be able to build the temple." I'm sure he was heartbroken, but he follows God's orders. And the one who actually builds the temple on that site is his son, King Solomon. After Solomon builds the temple on this site, the temple will stand here for centuries until the Babylonian invasion. The Babylonians come right here, exactly where the Golden Dome is, where the temple used to be. The temple is destroyed, and after 70 years, rebuilt by the Jews who returned from exile in Babylon. And this second temple, which stood here exactly in the same place as the first, was much smaller and much simpler. But it is the house of God, and the people were satisfied with that. But a few more centuries go by until the first century before Christ, when King Herod the Great comes to power. And when he comes to power, he orders the Jerusalem temple, which was here, to be dismantled, and he makes a major expansion. He builds a huge complex. That's why we usually say that the one who built the second temple of Jerusalem was King Herod the Great. But that's not true. The ones who built the second temple were the people who returned from the Babylonian exile, and King Herod the Great simply expanded the temple. The size of the complex we see today is exactly the same as it was in the time of King Herod. Herod's Jerusalem temple complex was also destroyed in the year 70 by the Romans. This space remained empty for many, many centuries. There was a small other thing up here, but really the next major buildings on the Temple Mount that were built here were constructed starting in the 7th century, which is what we see here. On one side, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and on the other side, we see the Dome of the Rock, the Golden Dome. And now we have to talk a little bit about the Muslims. For Muslims, which one is more important, the golden one or the gray one? The gray one. In the photos, everyone likes to take pictures of the golden one, but for Muslims, for them, the most important place is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque can be freely translated as the farthest mosque in the world. And for them, this is the third holiest place in the world. First Mecca, then Medina, and then Al-Aqsa. And why do they consider it sacred? Because in the Quran and in later Islamic traditions, in the Hadith, they have a story that Muhammad ascends on a magical animal. It has the body of a white mare, the tail of a lion, eagle wings, and the face of a woman. Muhammad climbs on top of this magical animal called Burak. He takes a night journey through the heavens, and where does he land? In Al-Aqsa, and the place where he lands, they later build this mosque. At least that's the Muslim tradition, and that's why, because here they believe that Muhammad landed with his magical animal. It's the most sacred place, but the Muslim tradition continues. She says that after he gets off his animal, he walks to a rock. What rock is that? The peak of Mount Moriah, where the Ark of the Covenant was, the place of the sacrifice. He reaches this rock, and from there he ascends to the heavens, according to, once again, the Muslim tradition. So for us as Jews and Christians, the rock is the rock. It is the peak of Mount Moriah, where Abraham went to sacrifice his son Isaac, which is a much older tradition than the Islamic tradition, but also the Islamic tradition, which is already several centuries old, speaks of that same rock from where he ascended to the heavens. But because of that, for Muslims, this is the most important place, and then the Dome of the Rock. But there's one more important place here for Christians, which at first glance doesn't stand out, but we're going there together now, and that's the direction we're going to walk.
Behind me are 400 truckloads of Temple Mount soil that were illegally dumped in 1999 like trash. But two archaeologists refused to let it disappear. They rescued the soil and created the Temple Mount Sifting Project. Today, over 500,000 artifacts have been recovered. Pottery from Solomon's temple, coins from Jesus' time, pieces of history that were meant to be lost forever. Now you can be part of this rescue mission, get authentic Temple Mount soil delivered to your door, and help keep biblical archaeology alive. Scan the QR code or use the link below.
We walked all the way here to this corner of the Temple of Jerusalem because at first glance it might not catch our attention. But for the Christian world, this place is extremely important because this corner is also called the pinnacle, the place of Jesus' second temptation. Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River. Right after, he goes to the desert and spends 40 days and 40 nights fasting. Then Satan begins to tempt him. The first temptation was in the desert itself. In which Satan offers Jesus to turn stones into bread. And what was Jesus' answer? Exactly, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. And then Satan takes Jesus to the pinnacle of the temple, to the corner, to the tip of the temple. Many times people imagine that the corner referred to the central part of the temple, where the Holy of Holies was, the most holy place, which is where the Golden Dome is today. But that wasn't possible. That area wasn't accessible to everyone. If they were up there having a conversation, obviously all eyes would be on them. That would be a scandal in itself. And Jesus hadn't started his public life yet. It's the moment, it's still the transition from private life, from the first 30 years of Jesus' life to his public life, which begins in Cana of Galilee with his first miracle. We can see that there is a transition, a bridge that connects the two periods of Jesus' life. And part of this bridge, part of this transition is precisely the baptism and the temptations. And that's why he is brought here to the pinnacle, to the tip of the temple. Remembering that at that time, the outer wall was still about 15 meters higher than what we see here. They were right at the corner here. And I want everyone to start looking outside and see the height you can see from here. See if you think a person could survive jumping from that height. Did everyone get a look at the height? Do you think someone could survive if they threw themselves from a height like that? We have our group's cardiologist here. Could a person survive falling or jumping from that height?
No. And if they survive, there would be a lot of after effects.
And that's why the real challenge isn't whether he would survive the fall or not. It would be, go ahead and throw yourself, because then the angels would have to come save you. And if the angels come to save you, I mean, you would prove to everyone who you are. And this is actually a test of ego. Jesus was born as Jesus, but no one knew who he was. He was here in the middle of Jerusalem, next to the temple, and people were living their lives as if with no idea at all of what was happening. So it would be a way to prove to everyone who he was. And not only that, it's interesting that this spot we're looking down at here, that's where the temple stairs were, where the Hulda Gates entrance was. This side of the temple was the busiest entrance in Jerusalem. So not only doing this here in the middle of Jerusalem, but at the busiest spot where hundreds, if not thousands of people would see it on any given day. During biblical festivals, the temple was much more crowded, but there was always a crowd here. So it would really be an ego thing, an ego test, to come and show once and for all to everyone here who you are. But obviously Jesus doesn't fall into temptation, and what does he answer? No?
You shall not tempt the Lord your God.
You shall not tempt the Lord your God, which means obviously he does not fall into temptation. Satan still tries a third time and makes a third temptation on the high mountain, but Jesus does not fall into any of the temptations. And after that, he goes to Galilee and really begins his ministry. So this very simple little corner here at the edge of the Temple Mount marks a truly crucial moment in the history of Jesus. And now that we've seen the pinnacle of the temple here, if anyone still wants to, take a picture and we'll head towards the Dome of the Rock. We are now going up, looking straight ahead at the Dome of the Rock, the Golden Dome, and know that it is really made of gold. This is more than 80 kilos of gold that was donated by the King of Jordan to cover the original dome, which was made of another metal. It was a gray metal, exactly like the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And that's why it's so beautiful. It shines so much because it's real gold. An interesting fact about the Dome of the Rock is that it is not exactly in the center of the Temple Mount. So if we take this whole large platform that we're walking on and draw two lines, an X in the middle, the central point is not the Dome of the Rock. What is the central point of the Temple Mount? That dome over there, do you see that small gray dome? In Hebrew, we call it Kipput HaShalshelet, and the Kipput HaShalshelet is actually the center of the Temple Mount. That means that neither the Dome of the Rock nor the Temple of Jerusalem were at the center of the Temple Mount. They were always more over here. And so now imagine that there are four outer walls around the complex. We have the south wall, the north wall, the western wall, and the eastern wall. The four walls still exist. Three of them are clearly visible to this day, but only one is where we see a large number of Jews going to pray. And which of the four walls is the one where Jews usually go to pray? At the western wall. Why? Because the Dome of the Rock, I mean the peak of Mount Moriah, among all the walls, it is closest to the western wall. That's why the western wall, which is what we call the Wailing Wall. Actually, it wasn't originally a place for Jewish prayer. Jews always came up here to pray at the temple, to offer sacrifices at the temple. And the wall came about as a way to provide access for prayer, since Jewish prayer has not been allowed here for quite some time. So the western wall is there precisely because it's the closest spot where we can pray outside the Temple Mount complex, but still be here right in front of the Dome of the Rock. Is that clear? So that's the reason for the Wailing Wall. And after our visit here at the Temple Mount, we'll go there together, and there we'll also be able to pray. So if anyone wants to take a few minutes now to take some pictures, So everyone, we are now heading to the Wailing Wall. We are now in front of the Wailing Wall. And now that we are here, we understand a little better what this place behind the Wailing Wall is. What is it really? It's Mount Moriah. So we can't see it from here, but where we see the trees, a little to the left of those trees is the Dome of the Rock, the peak of Mount Moriah. And where was the Temple of Jerusalem? So here is the outer wall of the Temple of Jerusalem. And yes, there are original stones from the time of the Second Temple, from the time of Herod. If you look at the lower rows of stones, they are really, really big, and they have what looks like a frame around them, a stone frame. Those are the original stones. And here it's important to highlight, when Jesus predicts the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and says that not one stone will be left upon another, what happens? The temple itself, the Holy of Holies, really not one stone was left upon another, nothing was left there. However, from the outer walls, which were this expansion, this complex, the outer courtyards, the outer walls, the external walls, those did remain, and quite a lot of them, so the external complex. Here it is, a witness to the place and the history of the place, and you can see that the Wailing Wall is divided. On the left side are the men, on the right side are the women, and that's how prayers are held in Orthodox Jewish places, even to this day, also in Orthodox synagogues. If we go to visit, we see that there is this separation between men and women. Sometimes the women are on the upper floor and the men are on the lower floor. On one side or the other, there are different arrangements, but usually men and women don't usually pray together. Now, for us who are going to visit the Wailing Wall, what are the rules? First, men need to cover their heads. Those who have a hat or cap can use it, and those who don't, at the entrance there's a yarmulke you can borrow. When we're at the wall, you'll see a lot of people leaving, walking backwards. This isn't a rule, it's not an obligation, but it's a very strong tradition at this place. Because if we consider that we come here to talk to God, we are in God's presence. Because God says in the Bible, it's written, "My name will be there, I will have my eyes and ears open to hear the prayers made in this place." So if we consider that we are there in God's presence, we don't just turn our backs on God and leave. So it's a tradition to leave a little bit backwards like this and then turn around. You can do as you prefer, but you'll see that most people who come to visit this place and pray here really do this as a sign of respect. We are now in the heart of the Jewish quarter. Right behind us is the Herva synagogue. Herva means the destroyed one. But why is such a beautiful synagogue called the destroyed one? Because it was destroyed and rebuilt several times. More specifically, destroyed 4 times and rebuilt 5. The last destruction happened in 1948, not that long ago, and the last reconstruction was in 2007. So everyone, the old city of Jerusalem is not frozen in time. All the time, things are happening here. And if we're going to talk about things that can happen, we are now in front of the golden menorah. This menorah is an exact replica of the menorah that was inside the Temple of Jerusalem. That includes the materials. It's really completely covered in gold. Several $million were used to cover this menorah in gold. And by the way, just a few weeks ago, it got another gold coating after several years of it wearing down a bit. Now they gave it a new gilding, a new coating, another layer of gold. But the importance of this menorah is that it was made by the Temple Institute, or rather the Third Temple Institute. They are institutes that study and teach about the first and second temples, and they are preparing for a possible future temple. And they are making the utensils. They were the ones who made the menorah exactly according to the biblical instructions, and not just the menorah. They have practically all the temple utensils ready, kept in a museum called the Temple Institute, and that's where we're going now.
My name is Aline. I am a Brazilian history teacher, and my experience here in the Holy Land has been amazing. It's something very powerful to be here in the biblical places, walking on this ground that has such a special, moving meaning, and to be here with this group as well, a wonderful group. Everyone connects, talks, wants to show how much they love this land, and it was really, truly special for me.
Coming here is a milestone in our lives. It opens our eyes. It's a unique opportunity for something that was only in our imagination. Reading the Word of God and being able to walk through and experience this place where God's presence is continuous here.
I want to thank God for the life of Aline and her whole team, because this is a unique experience for us. After all, we know Israel through the Bible, right? And now you're touching this, you're experiencing this here, walking on this land, and it's confirming even more what we read in the Bible. So being here is very rich, very wonderful. I invite everyone to really come and have this experience, because it's truly surreal, something unique, something one of a kind.
Yes,
A blessing from God for our lives, this visit here.
let's get started.
So, my name is Marcos Godinho. I'm a personal trainer. I live in Porto Alegre, and I came here to join Aline's caravan in Israel. I believe the organization of the caravan has been exceptional. All the hotels are very good. The organization of the buses to pick us up and take us to each place, the duration of each tour has been excellent. Regarding the experience, being here in Israel has been amazing, because you get to visit places like where the tabernacle was in Shiloh. We're going to see the Pool of Bethsaida. We can see everything that happened inside Jerusalem, which is also where a large part of Jesus' ministry took place. So it's been amazing to be able to see in real life everything I had already read about in the Bible passages. So my experience has been transformative, because it has connected me more and more. Not just with Jesus, but with the entire biblical story we've read countless times, an amazing experience.
Now, I want to ask the people from the caravan, did you enjoy today? So thank you also to everyone who watched, and we'll see you next time.